Salvador trip. First off, I'm going to ask everybody on the team to move up here to the choir loft. Take her. And while the team's moving up here, I just want to say thank you to the church. This trip was, fairly expensive. We'll wait on Madison. And this was something that we were able to raise all the money for from within the church. Also, the prayer support was incredible. The number of people that told me that they were praying for us daily throughout this trip, and some people, multiple times a day throughout this trip was incredible as well. And it was definitely felt. We appreciate all of you guys and your support and your prayer. And, allowing your family members to go on this trip. I know for some of you guys that was a sacrifice. For some of you watching on the live stream, that was a sacrifice, letting a family member go for a week or more than one family member. And to the team, I want to say thank you to you guys as well. I know it was a sacrifice for a lot of you too, leaving your businesses and your jobs and your families behind long term. I appreciate you guys making that sacrifice and making that commitment to this. What we're going to do here this evening, we've got a few people that have signed up to talk about some of the specific things that we were involved in while we were down there. And we will go through those after I finish up this little intro here. And those people will be able to give you a more detailed overview of the specific things that we did while we were there. And then at the end, we'll do a Q&A. So we've got a microphone here that we'll pass around for anybody here in the audience that has a question. And then if anybody on the live stream watching has a question, just drop your question in the comments on the Facebook feed. And Cody will read those out for us. Up first, we're going to do just a cultural overview, and that'll be Angie and Laura.
First. Okay. So I kind of wanted to give you a little background on El Salvador. I didn't know much about El Salvador other than that it was in Central America. It's the only Central American country that actually doesn't border the Gulf of Mexico at all. So it faces the Pacific Ocean to the south. And it's boundaried by Honduras and I didn't bring my map up here, but I have it and you can look at it later. So El Salvador, the people are a mixture of different backgrounds. You have the Aztecs and the Mayans that lived in that area. The Spanish came in and conquered in the 1500s, and so you also have, the Spaniards intermarried with the people. In the First and Second World Wars, you had people coming from Europe, and so there's just this mix of people there. And I wanted to kind of give the context, again, the historical context, and I'm going to start with my other page. I've got my notes in two places because I'm not real organized. Okay. And I have to walk and think, so I dictated these things into my phone while I went for a walk after doing a bunch of research. Okay, and so they were controlled by the Spanish until 1821 when they gained their independence. And since then, the people have been oppressed by unjust leaders for decades, in fact, for centuries. The current president, a millennial, he's about 40 years old, has declared a state of exception to the current constitution, which was created after a long, bloody civil war between 1979 and 1992. He did this 5 months ago, so we're going into 5 months of that. And he did it in response to 87 murders, which took place in one weekend in San Salvador, the capital. These were a result of gang violence, and they were a retaliation against members of the government who had been making deals with them, who stopped making those deals. And so they retaliated by just going on a rampage and killing a bunch of people. So in response, the government's gone on a wholesale rampage against gangs, rounding up, they've arrested over 46,000 people and thrown them in jail since March. That's more than 2% of the population of the country that is incarcerated in a prison system that's only made to hold 18,000 people, and there's more than 38,000, and they've rounded up 46,000 just since then. And so add that to the 38,000 that are already in there, and you've just got dozens of people crammed into these tiny cells. There's not food really provided enough for them, so your family member might just get yanked off the street if they even think you're associated with a gang without any proof. In a closed jury, they decide whether you're guilty or not, and you could get put in jail for 46 years just because you look like you might be a gang member. So people are glad that they're trying to put a stop to all the oppression that the gangs are perpetrating on people. Businesses consider it part of the cost of doing business to pay off the gangs so that they don't kill their workers for showing up at a convenience store to deliver Pepsi and cross over a line into some other gang's territory. And it made me think of the principalities and powers, how Satan claims control, this is mine, and this gang says this is mine, and another one says this is mine, but it all belongs to Jesus. And the enemy wants to steal and kill and to destroy, and that's what he's always been after. And so the solution to El Salvador, is the gospel. They need Jesus. And I just thought of how this people who's been oppressed by gangs, who's been oppressed by government leaders, who was oppressed by the Spaniards, when they had the opportunity to name their country, they called it the Republic of the Savior to express their hopes and their dreams for peace and salvation. And that's what La Fuente, the ministry that we went down to serve alongside, which you'll hear more about, let me back up a little bit. The people embraced Christianity when it was presented to them. 47% of the people identify as Catholic and another 33% as Protestant. That's 80% of the population who identifies themselves as Christians. Only 17% are non-religious. And the remaining 3% just belong to other religions of various sorts. The people of El Salvador continue to raise their families and work to support them. To protect themselves, there's razor wire everywhere. I think they must keep the whole world supply, of manufacturing of razor wire and iron bars and corrugated metal to block out so that they feel safe where they're at. One of the ladies asked one of the members of the ministry there at La Fuente, how would he describe the character of the people of El Salvador? And he said, friendly. And the people were really, truly friendly. And so you have a people who go on with their lives and have joy and have hope in spite of what's continually the enemy is warring against them. The younger people, they were explaining to us, view Christianity as something for the older people. And so it's kind of this formal thing. And so at the ministry there, they want to show them that Jesus might show up in jeans and a t-shirt. They want to display to the youth of San Salvador and throughout the country, Jesus is a living, breathing, life-giving Savior today. He might show up in jeans and casual clothes. He might do sports with them or feed them a warm, tasty meal for lunch or help them with their math lessons or their English studies. He's involved with their lives and families and is intimately concerned about their problems and struggles, and that's exactly what he's doing through the body of Christ who serves in the ministry of La Fuente that we came alongside. So if you have more questions, I would love afterwards to chat with you, but I'm going to wrap mine up. And you wanted to share anything? No?
I was going to add to yours, but
Oh, go ahead, jump in, add. No?
good.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me take your notes.
Okay, yes, please.
So that's a little bit of the culture that we walked into when we went down there to minister, but no cultural overview is complete without an overview of what we ate while we were there. People always seem fairly interested in what types of food you ate when you were on a missions trip. And so Andrew Hunter is going to talk briefly about that.
Hello. So we were very pleasantly surprised whenever we arrived there and they said, hey, we're going to be starting you guys off with lunch. And for me, that's something that's really exciting. I think everybody here knows that I like to eat and I like to eat a lot. So we started that day with lunch and then they showed us around and then the rest was all good. So what we would eat for breakfast usually was lots of eggs. We had omelets one morning, usually basic breakfast food. We had cereal once, basic stuff that you would expect for breakfast. And then one of my favorites was the refried beans with scrambled eggs and sour cream, and then they had plantains in there, and then they put that all in like a burrito. and that was probably one of my favorite breakfast foods. And I tried to recreate that here back at home without any luck. So some of the things there that we ate were really good. I'd have to say the one thing that I didn't like was the raw mango with Worcestershire sauce on it. That was a little odd. I ate it and I tried it, but that was the one thing that I didn't really like. I was expecting the food to be a lot more spicy than it was, but they always had hot sauce, and I think Doug was a big purchaser at the grocery store. Every time we'd go to the grocery store, he'd always get a thing of hot sauce, and it wouldn't last long. We'd all eat it. So that was really good. That was really fun. We had ice cream several times. Some had ice cream more than others. Yeah, that was not fun for Miss Dee Dee. She was not happy that she found out we got ice cream without her, and she was very upset. But they made it right, and we all went and got ice cream. And what was the name of your concoction that you got, Stuart? So he got an interesting beverage, and it was unripe mango, the Worcestershire sauce, tahine, all sorts of interesting things. Was there anything else in there? Chili. Yeah, it was an interesting color too, but I thought that was really funny. Let's see. We had lots of these corn tortillas, if you will. They were really thick. It wasn't what you buy here in the store. You go to the store here and you get a plastic bag of 8 to 15 tortillas, and you go there, and the kitchen staff was excellent. They did a good job, and they always had prepared us really good fresh stuff, and it was always local. And I think one of the best nights that we had for local food, you see Cody there, he's got a grin on his face. We had pupusas. That's a very traditional dish. I would describe it as a tortilla that's been filled with stuff inside. It's not really a tortilla. So what they did was they took a flour pancake, if you will, and then they filled it with all sorts of stuff: beans, cheese, chicken, beef, jalapeno, octopus. That was a good one. And then they put another layer on top, and then they fried it, and that was really good. I ordered 3. I was afraid that 3 was not gonna be enough, but it was. So that was some of our highlights. We had fresh fruit with breakfast every morning. That was another thing that was really good. We had really good pineapples. That was really good. And I went on the street one day on our last day there, and I bought 2 coconuts, and I had the guard at the guard shack cut them open for us. And I shared it with everybody, and that was really good. And I told him how expensive coconuts are here, and he looked at me, and he was really shocked at the price that a coconut is here compared to there. I bought 2 coconuts for 50 cents. So that was interesting, and that was an experience. So that's a little bit about the food that we had in El Salvador. Thank you.
Now that we've gone through the background, it's time to start talking about what we actually did while we were there on the ground. And Annika Zeiderveen is going to come up and give us an overview of what a day in our life looked like, as well as what travel looked like while we were there.
So each day was similar in some aspects and then different in others. We would usually get up and have breakfast around 7:30, and then that's all in that room that you see. There's a lot of the chairs in the row. We'd have worship right after breakfast, and then we'd just move all the tables out of the way. So that room was used for many things. So we'd have breakfast early, and then worship and devotions, and then cleaning up. And then after that, we'd have a little bit of time. So the kids for the school program don't come till around lunchtime. So we'd have a couple hours to either prep for the activities or games for the kids, or some of the other people would do construction or work on projects around the site. And that was like painting and fixing some fans and doing some other stuff like that. And then around lunchtime, the people going to Apopa, which was the other site with the school kids, they would go have lunch. And then the kids would come to the site in San Salvador and have lunch, and the rest of the team would have lunch with them. So then after lunch, there was either the people worked at the site with the kids. There's some pictures, the kid going down the slide, which it was kind of a weird slide. It just was 2 poles going down. They'd stay there and do English and work on some crafts or some other things at San Salvador. There was the construction site that we worked on a lot, and that's another picture up there. And then some people would go to Apopa, which was the other group where the kids were. And so there was always at least 2 or 3 groups doing different things. So after the school program and after the construction kind of ended for the day, the top right is the living room area, 2 couches and 2 chairs. It got kind of tight sometimes, but that's where some people could hang out. The bottom picture is dinner, just another of everyone together. And then one night we went to the supermarket and were able to get some snacks and some other stuff from there. We also went several times to get ice cream, and that was just a short walk from the site. And then we got around. We usually just had the 2 vans, and they had quite a few seats. The picture at the top left is a little truck. The day that we went and got the water reservoir cistern thing for the construction site, some of us were in that, and that was an experience to be in the back of one of those little trucks. Otherwise, it was just in the vans back and forth. The living accommodations were something I was kind of not expecting. I guess I knew this, but there was no AC. I also didn't know that there was no hot water. So it was cold showers, and there was a shower per room, and then there is the room at the bottom left. You can see there's 3 showers kind of in a room. And in the kitchen, in the very back, it's kind of hard to see, but there's the stoves. That's what the church got them last time. They noticed that they only had 1 stove, and they had a lot of food to prepare, so they have a nice kitchen, also very hot in the kitchen. And then another of the main room that we do devotions, worship, meals, hanging out in there. So I think that's it.
Envision El Salvador exists because of the program La Fuente that they do down there and the staff that's committed to running that program. The site has been in existence since about 2007, starting out sort of first as a go into the schools after school program, and it's grown into what it is now. So Tripp is going to come and give an overview of what the program actually looks like today and talk a little bit about the staff that we met and worked with while we were down there.
So the program that is kind of the main arm of Envision El Salvador is called La Fuente. It means the fountain or the fount, which can also carry the meaning of the source, the place of origin, the place where you come to receive something. So that's kind of what they've taken on. The last time that we were there, La Fuente was still their program. They've had a little turnover in staff since then. They've also kind of changed their game plan a little bit. They've adapted to the types of children that they have, the ages, and they've also expanded to a different site. So the last time we went, I'm not sure whether Apopa was off the ground yet. I think it was kind of, it might have just been a twinkle in someone's eye at that point. But there's kind of a city center program in San Salvador, which is where we stayed. It's where most of the work has gone on. But then there's one that's kind of it's almost like kind of a satellite area. I never felt like we left San Salvador because it didn't look like anything changed. It was still a giant Central American city when we got to Apopa, but we were in a different place. And it's a little bit farther down, so all the staff would always look at us and chuckle when we were going to Apopa because they were like, oh, it's burning up down in Apopa because the elevation is lower. Hot is hot. It was the same. It didn't matter. There were a couple days I think it popped up a little higher, but So at La Fuente, last time they had several different programs running. There was a girls' flag football team. There was a league that they were a part of with some of their girls. Then there was a football club, soccer club for the boys. That's kind of rotated out. I don't know that they'll never get back to that, but that's not really their focus nowadays. The program now, as it's run, is an after-school program. After school means about midday. They come in about midday. They start their time there with lunch, and then they'll go on to rotating through different centers. It depends on kind of what team is in town or what help they have, but they'll go through things like there was a distance learning thing going on upstairs. They'll have homework help. They'll have tutoring. They'll have English help. An English tutor may come in from one of the local universities. When we were there, it was us. They may have music. That was kind of new. I didn't remember that from last time, that there was a group that was rotating through and doing a music class, which is really interesting. And that most of that's happening in San Salvador, the first location. Down in Apopa, they have a little bit less freedom. Their site is a little bit more self-contained. In San Salvador, they can kind of walk across the street to a park, and then there's a park up the road. It's more or less, this is a safer area. At least they feel comfortable with kids walking to and fro with adults with them. The day we got there on Wednesday, we were off and running because it was kind of their sports athletic outside day. Okay, and they convinced a few of us to start in with their calisthenics, but then most of us joined in once they started actually playing soccer and basketball and that kind of thing. Some days, like for instance, Friday is a special day because they will have what is called youth group in San Salvador, and that's more of a focus on a time of worship and devotions. Whereas in Apopa, I felt like we were doing something like that each time we went. I don't know if y'all noticed. The kids are a little bit different in different areas. The ones in San Salvador seem to be a little more energetic, but maybe a little more rough around the edges, and the ones down in Apopa seem to be a little bit more focused in, a little bit more, they kind of had their eyes on the prize in terms of, okay, what I'm here has purpose, I can better myself with this, and they were kind of a little bit buckled down. And several of them, I think, we noticed them in the praise band at the church on Sunday morning. The site in Apopa takes place in the site of one of the two Christian Missionary Alliance churches in El Salvador. So they use the church space during the week for educational opportunities, which is a great idea.
Okay, a little bit more about La Fuente and what happened. Apparently I have a reputation, I like maps. So I'm going to show you a map of El Salvador, and we're going to show you a little bit about where we were. It's kind of small, but this is the country here. And San Salvador is right in the middle here. This is the main capital city. And Apopa, so we're right basically in town when we're at La Fuente, San Salvador. And Apopa is a little town to the north, right here. You can see it on the map. If you want to come up a little later, I'll leave it up here. A little town, and we had to descend. San Salvador was kind of higher in elevation. When you come out of the airport, you climb up. And I don't know, how high was it? Anybody? 3,000?
It was around, I think it was comparable.
About 2,500 feet in elevation. And when you go to Apopa, you drive down. And that's why it's a lot hotter down there, because you're driving down into kind of a lower area. So I want to share with you a little bit about one of the staff, this guy named Chino. His name was Milton. Was it Milton? Yeah. Okay, so Milton was a short little guy. He was about this high. I don't know, five or so. I think he said he was 40 years old. Single guy, and he works with La Fuente. He drove our van a lot. And he was a really funny guy. Like, we really enjoyed getting to know him. But he told me a story about growing up in El Salvador. And, I looked up this. I think it was 2015. El Salvador had the most murders per capita in the world. It was like number one. And due to the gang violence, and we'd hear about the gang violence. We'd hear about the dangerous issue. Chino was telling us stories. He said, it's getting safer in El Salvador now, but this spring they arrested thousands and thousands of gang members. The government has cracked down on them. So Chino, the reason I want to tell you this is Chino told us that growing up, he got a real childhood. He got to go play outside. He got to go, in the neighborhood. He'd play till dark. He'd be in the neighborhood and just play with his friends. But he said, today it's a lot different. And especially in Apopa, I want to talk a little bit about Apopa, and Marissa and Molly are going to tell you a little bit about what we did in Apopa. But especially in Apopa, had more of a reputation for being more dangerous. So he said the kids there, like they can't even go outside to play. Even in the summer or in the school, they go from the house to church and back, from the house to school and back. And they don't step outside their house other than what they officially need to go do. And he said the gangs are just so prevalent. They kind of watch everything. They know what you're doing. They know what La Fuente's doing. They know what the church is doing. And he just gave this little story of once maybe it was like a year or two ago, he was picking up children to go, because he would take the van. He would pick up children in the neighborhood to come to the church to have the program. And he just said it got real sketchy. Like these guys kind of step out on the street and behind him. They step out on the street in front of him. And the feeling that you get this feeling like these kids in Apopa, they are really, Tripp was saying, a little more reserved, a little more serious. And I think that's because of the conditions that they have to grow up in. And so Chino was telling us a lot about that. We really enjoyed Chino. He was really a lot of fun. He'd take us out at night, drive the van, take us to the volcano, take us to the city center. And he liked to joke a lot. He was really funny. So we spent a little bit of time in Apopa at the church in La Fuente, and I want Marissa and Molly. So Marissa, you can go first and tell us what you did with the kids in Apopa.
Well, on Tuesday, I went twice to Apopa, and on Tuesday we went and we made tie-dye shirts. We put a verse on the back, which I don't remember what it was, but we put a verse on the back. And me, Molly, and Mariah had all the kids sign our shirt. So we have the shirt with all their names on it. And Mariah didn't come to Apopa, and Molly didn't come either. So they made me bring their shirts and sign them.
All right, and Molly's going to tell us what she did in Apopa.
Another craft we did was airplanes. We put them together, and then the kids decorated them and put a verse on them. And I had all the kids sign their name on it. And then at the end, we flew the airplanes to see which one flew the farthest, and it was a lot of fun.
All right, thank you.
Aside from working with the kids in the 2 after-school programs, a large part of what we did while we were down there was construction. They've got an intern house that they're currently doing a fairly large remodel on, and Scott's going to come and tell us about that.
So as we kind of talked about, we kind of had about a third, roughly, of the group that just did the construction, the projects, and really you kind of identify the needs that they have. The staff there, they're amazing. They've got, 7 days a week they're working with kids. It's just like around your house or any other projects. Things just kind of fall in disrepair sometimes. You just don't have time, and so we were able to. They had things just at the center. Tim and Kirk, I think, painted for like 2 days straight, black gate up there. We did a guard shack. Cody welded right there. He's welding the bumper back on the van because it had, fallen off and gotten cobbled back together, and it was dragging over. Well, with 22 people, 11 that you're carrying around in each van, it was dragging on every curb and driveway that we went by. So there's things like that where the staff's not going to really jump in and do that kind of stuff. We had 22 of us, and I think at one point we were down to, 2 working toilets or something like that. And there's a number of them that just there were just signs that said out of order. Well, they have like a, pile of toilets in the side yard, so we made things work a little bit better so that we had more bathroom facilities and so forth. But that was kind of at the site, was just the sprucing the place up and just knocking out a to-do list that they weren't going to get to, and it's always a challenge because you don't really know where the tools are, you don't know where the materials are, and you got to kind of make it happen. And so that was that. The other site, so one of the challenges at this school, where the housing is for teams is really not that big. They probably had a couple of 15 by 15 rooms with a dozen people in each room. It was tight. When you have triple bunk beds, we didn't use them all, but wow, that's a lot of, that was tight. And so they bought a house that that will allow for interns and then bigger teams, and then the space that the teams are being held at now will be a high school. So they're trying to grow their school. It's a twofold thing. They just down the street, which houses are hard to come by, so they were able to get this place. And so the long-term goal is to build a new home for teams and interns, and then expand the school. It was a house, I guess. The last team, maybe you saw an actual house. Well, they took the roof off, and they're going to do a second floor, which is there's several of us that have been involved in lots of construction projects in the last 20 years. This was overwhelming. I'm not going to lie. It looked, there was just concrete. Everything's concrete there, for one thing. There's no wood. And so there was just nothing but walls with wide open sky up above, and just a couple of guys that were picking away. And we're looking at, boy, in the U.S. this would take 6 months with subs and crews, and so anyway, we went there, and it was just a lot of demo. We had to put in a doorway, which again here a sawzall and a skill saw, and 30 minutes you can have an opening. This took all day. And then we had to cut into a block wall that had rebar for an entrance, and that was all day. So we were sore. It was hard. I feel like, everything is manual there. There's no equipment. We made, I don't know, a couple hundred trips to the hardware store for tools and we'd stop it for ice cream every now and then, but it was challenging, but also, for the head person there with Tony, he's kind of overseeing the schools, but he's also overseeing this. So it was, it's a big undertaking, and so, we made some progress, and then we'll talk about the pit of despair. So one of the issues is, I guess their water just will stop every now and then. So it didn't happen with us, but if you have a team of, 20 people or plus a school, and then the water goes out, you're going to have problems. And so they wanted a reservoir, which a lot of times you'll see reservoirs on the roofs there. For whatever reason, we needed a reservoir in the ground. And so we had, the ones who were really involved with that, and just tell me if I'm missing anybody, but Andrew and Annika, Zach, Cody, Tripp, anyway, it was just digging. That's a 6.5 foot deep hole, probably 6 feet, 7 feet in diameter. And so it's going down in there. They're going to pipe water, and then that's going to be the reservoir. The problem was there was a lot of problems with this, but we're dealing with somebody who's not done this before, and really we hadn't. we understand the concept, but we didn't quite understand. They had an architect that needed certain mix of concrete and sand, and so you're dealing with like second or third hand information, but the problem is it's taking, like, you're just digging. They dug all day. And then you got to have it supposedly dry. Well, there's no roof, and it rains all the time. So during the night, it rained, and so there's Annika. She was on the water bucket brigade, but they would pass buckets up, they'd empty it out, and it was supposed to rain again, and we just thought, this is just not, I mean, this is crazy. And so then they came up with a plan, and they threw rebar over the roof. A little sketchy. They went and bought some tarps and tarped it and made it shed so that it wouldn't go in the hole again. And then, so that worked. The issue then, on the top right, is we went to we'll just call it a Lowe's, an El Salvador Lowe's. And it only took about 3 hours to get a tank. Everything takes a long time to get things done there, and that's the little truck that with a tarp over it that they all rode in, and but we got that, and then so we dug they dug it 7 feet deep. We got the tank, and it's about that high. So we filled a lot of the hole back in again, and got it in, and by the end of the week, it was no longer the pit of despair. It was a reservoir full of water, and of course it needs to be. I mean, there's no plumbing or electric in the place, so it's we're a ways away from having it work. But I would say that kind of sums it up. You don't get all the information, so you're acting on what you know. Things are changing by the hour or the minute, depending. And so you just gotta roll with things, but the bottom right, you can see they've got it all mudded in with the concrete and everything. And so it was good in that aspect. It was not easy. This was been on a lot of construction related trips like this, and this was probably one of the toughest. They didn't hold back. They gave us everything. So it was a good week in that aspect, and I think we made some progress for them. So.
Before we left, one of the things that the executive or the associate director of the site down there asked was if we would be willing to raise some extra funds and bring them down with us to host a field day. And when they asked me about that, I really didn't know what they were talking about. They said something about going to the beach, maybe having both of the teams together. And I just said, yeah, sure, why not? We can take care of that. That's fine. But it ended up being a little bit more than that. And Andrew Hunter is going to come back up and describe a little bit about what that was like.
So after digging the pit of despair, we wake up at 5 in the morning the next day. So everybody woke up super sore and super tired, and we all ate breakfast and we loaded up into the vans and bounced and scraped our way down the roads until we got to the Pacific Ocean, and we unloaded, and we found some hammocks under this big open roof, and we're like, you know what, this is nice. And a couple of us were just laying in the hammocks, and then they said, yeah, the kids are going to be here in 10 minutes. And so much for our peaceful, restful day after digging the hole. But they had a whole, I'm going to call it a Navy SEAL training course set up for us. We had everything from, I don't know what you call it, a balloon exploding competition to a dizzy stick to crawling under barbed wire. But we had our task set in front of us, and they decided to have a couple different teams all compete against each other, and we had 2 kids from Apopa on the team, we had 2 kids from San Salvador on the team, and then we had 2 team members on the team. So each team had 6 competitors, and they all had to complete the tasks or the things that they had set up for us. So we all walked down to the beach, and they had set up this course, and it started out with a balloon pop competition. So everyone got a balloon, and you had to make the balloon explode. And then once everyone in your group had made your balloon explode, you got to go down the beach, and you had to do this little hopscotch course. So you had a couple little, I'd call them like little hula hoops. They're about this big, and you had to jump around into them. And then we had to get real dizzy. So we had to do the dizzy thing where you put a stake or a bat or something on the ground, and then you have to turn around 10 times, and then you had to crawl under this wire. It wasn't really wire. It was they took some stakes, and they put stakes in the ground, and then they put some string over the top of it, and they made you crawl under it. What was real nice about it was some of it was underwater, and then the other part was filled with needles. So that was quite the experience. I don't think anyone came back with any rare diseases. No one got stabbed by any of the needles, so that was good. And then some of the final competition things were jump ropes, stuff like that, and that's how they finished off the tournament part of the day. We went back and we had, I'm going to go talk more about food now, I'm excited. We had really good chicken. They had some of the best grilled chicken I'd ever ate in my entire life. And I don't know if that was because I'd crawled through the sand all morning or if it was just really good. But we got a little bit of downtime, and then we played in the pool for the rest of the day. But before we did the games, we had a worship service with the kids. And I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, and we're gonna talk about the faith aspect of this whole trip. So every morning, like Annika had already mentioned, we had devotionals after breakfast, and that involved singing and a little devotional set up by a volunteer. A couple were led by staff members, others were led from our team members, and that's what we did every morning. On Sunday mornings, we went down to Apopa to the Alliance Church, and we had a very different from our service today at church. We were all freezing, I think, but down there it's a big metal hangar with a metal roof, and it's about 110 degrees, and you endure a service in that. So it was different, but it was good, and I enjoyed that, and that was an interesting moment. But back to the trip to the beach, we were not allowed to swim in the ocean because a couple months ago, before we arrived, there were a couple deaths from Envision El Salvador staff members. They drowned in the ocean because there's a rip current, and that's not something that many people know how to deal with there. So, was it 2 staff members that had died in the ocean? One staff and one student had died, so we were not allowed to get in the ocean. But we got into the pool at the place that we were staying for the day, and it was interesting. It was about 90 degrees. The water was really warm. It was basically like getting in a hot tub in the summer. But we had all sorts of fun water games. We played chicken, water polo, water volleyball. All the kids from Apopa and San Salvador all got together, and they were all super involved, and they're having a lot of fun. So if you see in the bottom middle, I think that's the big game of chicken going on. We tried to build a human pyramid there on the far right. I think we had 3 people on top of each other, and that was a lot of fun. We had all sorts of fun games that day, and that was a lot of fun, and it was a good, relaxing, but exhausting day after the whole. So thank you.
So obviously we were down there for a week, and that's about a 45-minute overview of what we did while we were down there. I want to give everybody on the team now an opportunity to just give a maybe 2 or 3 sentence final thoughts, if they want to. If they don't want to, they don't have to. But we will pass the mic around for them to do that. And then after that, we'll give you guys the opportunity to ask any questions. If you want some clarification on anything, that would be the time. And I'll pass the mic around to everybody out there. Are we live on this one? That's not Cody's fault. I'm changing the plan on it. And I've got to hit the button. Here we go. Again, that wasn't Cody's issue. That was me changing the plan. I'll go ahead and give my final thoughts. For me, leading this trip with Jess, leading a team of 22 people was a bit overwhelming going into it, but I wanted to just close my time at least saying that the team did absolutely amazing. People were willing to step in and do things that we would consider difficult, digging the hole especially, and then people signed up for all the devotionals, people signed up to lead music, people stepped in wherever they were needed, even with things that they didn't think that they were going to have to do before they left. So the team really made this trip easy for both Jess and I feel like they ministered well and represented this church well. And so that was the big takeaway for me, was that, you know, you guys sent a team down there and you guys entrusted us to represent you. And I feel like that we did that very well. Is anybody else?
I'll say something. Okay. Yeah, the thing, it was, two things for me was hairy eyeballs and the volcanoes. The hairy eyeballs is that fruit. What do they call that red fruit with the spikes? Looks like hair all over it. Lychee. Okay, you ever had lychee? Do you know what lychee is? Okay, I think sometimes somebody told me you could find it at Ingles. Walmart? Oh, I was going looking in the wrong place then. Okay, because I was going to bring everybody some. I was going to buy the whole batch and bring it anyway. I think that, you know, it's a weird looking fruit, right? I've never seen it before. And so it was kind of thing that I tried it and I liked it. Who all liked it? Anybody not like it? Okay, there you go, too. It's kind of weird texture. You peel that red thing off, the hairy thing, the hairy eyeball thing off, and you got this eyeball inside. It's white, and it's kind of slimy. Anyway, I liked it. And I guess that the point is for me was getting out, going outside the box, doing things that you would not normally do. And that was good for me, whether it was the construction or trying to speak Spanish, like, what is it? Sorry, I still can't say it, Stuart. Sarah Divertito. There you go. See, I have the hardest time with it. Anyway, it was all fun. And, you know, and then getting to speak a little bit, and I enjoyed that. But then trying to have conversations with the youth there, that was a challenge for me. And I think one of the thing, trying to get to know these kids, and finally, when you start getting to know a few of them, then you have to leave, because it takes so long for the translation and for the conversation to get going. But I remember at Papo, did I say that? What's that? Apopa. See, I can't even say that right. Apopa. They broke us up in groups one time, and in there I got to share my testimony. I had an interpreter, and that was pretty cool. And there's these kids, Moses and Marlene, and there was one girl, I thought said her name was Papa Milla, but turns out her name was Pamela. Anyway, I think she was she was an interpreter at Apopa. Anyway, so that was fun. And just doing things that different. I just don't ask me to paint. Like one time I was painting the iron grate, and I had paint on my hand. I didn't know it. And so next thing you know, I'm leaning against the wall, and I could just black paint down this blue wall. And then one time I had it on the black paint on my elbow and on the other side. And then one time I had the brush and like that against the wall. Anyway, give Kurt or somebody a good excuse to paint that again. So anyway, I was doing a few things different. Pardon?
We painted the whole wall.
They painted the whole wall because of me. And anyway, the other thing was the volcano. Bucaran, it was just beautiful. And you go up this you go up to the mountain, to the rim, and you look down, and you can see birds flying all the way down there. It's just beautiful, all green and lush. And they say there's a volcano within a volcano, right? Something like that. There's still like a little volcano down in the, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's where the eruption. Anyway, but to end this thing, this volcano, I'm sure there was lava and rock, the lava rock and all that, but all you see is this just lavish green, dense forest, right? Just beautiful. And this thing erupted in 1909. And just over time, it all turned into rich, dark soil and just these beautiful trees and the green. It was just beautiful there. And it just reminded me how God can turn beauty into ashes. And that's what we're hoping and praying for the young people there, that they'll have hope and that they'll have real life in Christ there. And that's my prayer for them. And I'm so grateful for the church, your support. The generosity just overwhelms me. And Ben and Jess, y'all are awesome. Thank you.
I want to say a few things about the staff that we got to know. Just really, it was a great encouragement to be around those guys and gals. And I'm proud that our church supports La Fuente. Allows these guys to come in there, and you could tell they had a heart for the Lord. You could tell they had a heart for the kids. And they're talented guys. Like, they were really talented in music. They were talented in worship. Talented in speaking. And so I just came away really encouraged, just thinking, like, these are our people. This is who we support. And I think everyone in our church should be proud to support the program there.
Yeah, one thing I would like to say about the staff members there is they really encouraged me, and it was really an eye-opening experience to just see someone and to meet someone that was a Christian and a fellow believer thousands of miles away, and having an instant connection with these people over something that's really powerful.
I'm going to stand up because the podium is kind of between me and you, and I want to see you. One of the things I just wanted to share, this was a special trip for us just because the last church mission trip we went on, we were only able to take Cody and Annika because Zachary was too young. So this was special for our family just because we could all share it together. I also was just really excited just how much we as a team became a family. I feel like before we went, we were kind of groups of individuals, and we came home as a team, just always willing to help each other, and that was just the experience that we shared together was really neat. And one other thing I just wanted to share, we had 2 translators who came with us a lot. And they learned their English by being a part of the Compassion program. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with Compassion or not, but it's an organization where you pay anywhere between $30 and $40 some dollars, depending on where the location of your child is, for them to be able to attend a center once a week, and they get food and clothing, and they get to attend a school program. But these 2 young men attended Compassion and were given the opportunity to go to extra classes to learn their English, and they both opted to do that because their sponsors were willing to pay for that. But they have such a heart for the Lord, and if you've ever considered doing Compassion, it really, you can just tell how much of a difference it has made in their lives. And that was just really neat to see Compassion at work, even though we weren't going as part of Compassion, or that wasn't part of what our trip was just to be able to see how it had impacted them.
It just reminds me just how we're all one body. We express in different ways compassion, and we work there, and others invest. And the training that we got before we went, it was worth the trip was just the icing on the cake. The training was fabulous too, just to shift our view of not being above people, but coming alongside people in the body, and our neighbors. I mean, to me, it made me see my neighbors and where we live in a new way, and the people around me, that God has put gifts in each person, and he wants to draw those out, and he wants to nourish them, and he wants them to know how much he loves them. And that sense of coming alongside, that we weren't just coming in, swooping in to help, but we're coming alongside our brothers and sisters. Like you said, people thousands of miles away, we've never met, we have a connection. And Doug had commented, and we were talking after the trip, too, of we tend to be a time-focused culture. We're going to do this from this hour to that hour, and they're more of a people-focused culture. And so, the mission trip, I was kind of expecting to be busy from the time I got up until I went to bed, and there was time for us to connect as a team, to connect to the staff, to sit and share, especially like the day you guys all went and had fun at the beach. I was sitting there with the mom staff who was assigned to the sick people who didn't get to go places. That apparently they take turns doing that. That's a thing. They're called the mom of the day, and they get to serve. But it was just beautiful to get to connect to the people and to come alongside others, and to just see that these kids are being loved on by teams coming in saying, you matter. Jesus loves you. We love you. And that ministers not to just those kids, but to their families. And it was just a privilege and a joy to be part of it. And I just am so grateful to all of you who've given so we could go.
Something that was kind of eye-opening for me was just to be able to see how the people there, their culture is so different than ours, and just their daily life is different. The kids go through different school programs, but especially the worship was really cool, just because they sang the same songs that we sing here. I can't remember the names of the songs because they're in Spanish, but I knew the tune, and it was just cool to have that similarity between the worship, and it just really opened my eyes to different ministry opportunities that are there, and things to do. So.
It was kind of touched on, but we have a lot of training, and it was good. But one of the things that people will talk about is how effective really is a short-term mission trip. You've got thousands and thousands of dollars, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of travel, and then you're there on the ground for 7 to 10 days, depending on what you're doing. It was good to just really witness how effective that can be. It was talked about just how much we are behind La Fuente and what they're doing there. And you look at this church, I mean, it was about 10% of the church that you could say that went down there, and that's contagious. And I can see another trip, and just the more people that are doing this, the more our focus changes from, inward and what the church looks like, or sometimes different things that are going on here, and you just realize how important it is to get out there. But yeah, when the team gels and, we're able to just help them out, and yeah, it was said, you have a servant attitude when you're there. You're just there to help. You're there to facilitate the crew that is down there. And so it was just really neat to be a part of the argument for why short-term missions are actually really, really effective.
All right, we will open it up now to the floor for some Q&A. If you have a question for a specific team member, you can ask that specific team member, or you can just ask a question to the whole group, and anybody who knows the answer can answer it. Do we have anybody who has a question?
I'm just curious how many out of the group, how many it was their first trip?
Yeah, for a pretty significant portion, it was their first trip. Was there anybody that hadn't been out of the country? A couple. 3. Any other questions? Oh yeah, our plan, we will be going again next summer to El Salvador. There's also some talk of doing a trip to Envision Holy Lands as well. Next summer, that'll probably have to be led by somebody else. There's only so much we can do, but there is plan for doing that trip as well.
This is probably for Ben, but this morning you mentioned that El Salvador Missions was raising money for something, and I can't for the life of me remember what that is, but could you tell us that again, and then how we fill out our envelope so we get it to the right place?
Sure, I can answer that one. The total cost of changing the intern house into housing for teams and intern housing together, the construction project that we were working on, is approximately $130,000. They've raised approximately $60,000 of that total price, and then they've spent 30 of that so far on foundation work. So they need to raise another $70,000 to complete the project, with Tony acting as the general contractor. So that's what they're working on now. Tony did sort of tell us that is a pretty big stress on him. He mentioned that there were several nights, even that week while we were down there, that he would get up with his daughter. They have a young daughter, Raquel. He would get up with his daughter at about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then would not be able to go back to sleep again because of the stress of that particular project. So we could feasibly, or churches in the U.S. could feasibly raise basically double that, an extra $130,000 on top, and they could hire the whole project out. The reason that they haven't done that so far is because the money isn't coming in as fast as it needs to in order to run that project. So right now what they're looking to raise, like I said, is a total of $70,000 to have Tony act as the general contractor and get this project completed. If you want to donate to that, anything that comes into the church with Envision El Salvador in the memo line or on the front of your envelope or whatever will go towards that project, as will any of the extra that we raise to go on the trip once all the receipts are sort of rectified. Any other questions? Do you have any from Facebook?
Yes, we have from Pat Phillips. For anyone or all of us, do we have any more God moments, new direction, etc.?
I thought that it was quite powerful the morning that we were at the pool. So we had the combined groups, and they were doing, on regular mornings, if we were not helping lead worship, they would kind of throw us a bone because they would do maybe some English songs, or at least we'd have the Spanish on the board, so that would help us out. Outside, that was not happening. So some of the songs we didn't know, and we were just kind of clapping our hands. But then at least at one point, I know that there was I can't remember the song, but they were singing it in Spanish, but most of us knew most of the words to that song. And so you had we were all interspersed, and you had just this bilingual worship moment going on, which was very interesting, because we were singing the version we knew, they were singing the version they knew, and we were all just worshiping at the same time. It was quite the moment.
And I'd like to add to that. So whenever we were tasked to dig the hole, we were told that we need to dig a hole that's 2 meters by 2 meters. And if you guys look at Ben is probably about 2 meters tall. And we dug a hole that could bury Ben long ways and sideways. And whenever I was told that that's what we had to do, I didn't think we were going to be able to do it, but we did. And I think that was a miracle.
Any other questions from the group or from Facebook?
Yes. Dee Dee, did you get to do what you planned?
Who asked that?
Miss Pat. Miss Pat.
Well, yes, one thing I wasn't going to do was manual labor this time. I did manual labor last time. But I felt like my time there was really to talk to the staff that's there. They were really encouraging to me, and I got to see what their heart was, because I talked to several of them, because I can speak Spanish, so I was able to just do it all in Spanish. And I also talked with the lady, Gloria. She works in the kitchen. I remember, doing that last time I went, and then this time I was in the kitchen several times. And she is cooking for Envision El Salvador, and she's going to school to get a psychology degree so that she can help the kids there at the place, La Fuente. But, so I was really encouraged by that, and I told her we would pray for her, that she would get that done. And it was funny because we did go one day. Angelina, I don't know, probably you all don't know her, but she was there the last time, but she married a guy from El Salvador, and so she stayed there. And so we went, she drove us. I took Gloria and Angelina, and we went to a place kind of like, it seemed more like a dollar store than anything, but we were able to get some things for the kitchen. And then we went to a place and had ice cream. I think that day I had ice cream 3 times. But anyway, so we went and had ice cream, and she thanked me so much for bringing her with me and Angelina to get ice cream and to buy those little things that I did and all that. And she was just really encouraged by our group in a big way, because we did a lot of stuff, and we really, I think we encouraged them as much as they encouraged us. I left there very well encouraged. And I do have a confession. Only a few people have told this. The night before we were going to go on the trip, I told my husband, I says, I just want to confess something here right now. I don't really want to go. And Benjamin had already bought my ticket, and he goes, yeah, we're going to go, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, I don't really want to go. But I am so thankful that I went. That's all I'm going to say.
Is the lady's name in the psychology degree? Is that Gloria?
Gloria.
Okay, we'll pray for her.
Yes, yes.
Other questions? Did they actually try and bury me? No, the hole did at one point, but.
Some of these people are new. Tell them who Dee Dee is to you.
Oh, yeah, Dee Dee is my mother. Yes. Do we have any other questions?
From Facebook, we have a few more. Ms. Pat has specifically prompted me to speak, and she says I can't hide. I'm just kidding. She didn't actually say that. But for me, one of my biggest takeaways was probably how 2 different cultures, like America and El Salvador down there, very different. Even I would probably relate El Salvador to one of the other mission trips I've been on, is Burkina Faso. Very, very different cultures. Both you can easily be submersed in each one and be heading on a strong path towards God. And there's no right way. There's no, we don't have the answer in America as much as anybody else does. So to go down there, be submersed in a new culture, follow God, and the way they do for a week, spend a lot of time in worship, as we do here. But we had worship every day. We had devotions every day, and that was powerful to me. I enjoyed that. From there, Madeline Sloan has asked, what was Chino's favorite song?
I don't know. These girls.
It was Fancy Like. Fancy Like.
All right, and then from Barry Bacon, he asked, we raised money for a van for Envision El Salvador. Please report on the status of that. Do we have anything on that?
Was that the white van? Is that the white van?
That's actually a new van. So yes, that's going to be. I don't know why I keep bringing that and then going to the pulpit mic. So we started raising money to cover a van for Envision El Salvador. The old van, actually the van that you saw the photos of that Cody was welding a bumper back on the bottom of, has more miles than it should. It's left them behind a couple of times in a precarious situation or two where they really shouldn't have been stuck. And so they had started raising funds for a new van back in January. Sum total price on that was somewhere in the range of about $36,000. And they had managed to raise some of that, and then the VBS in our church actually, they raised money. They raised about $1,200 to go towards that. And then we started raising money as a congregation, and through various gifts from people in the church, we hit the mark to cover the remainder of that van. And so they have, actually while we were down there, Tony put in a purchase order on that van. And so it's a little bit different. Here you can walk down to the dealership, sign the paperwork, sign part of your life away, and drive away in the van that afternoon. So what happens down there is a little bit different. You pay for the van, and then it takes approximately a month to a month and a half for them to send out the paperwork. The government has to do the basically what the DMV would do here. Here you would send out for your title, and your title would come back. All of that while you already have the vehicle. There you send out for your title, and you have to wait for the title to come back before you can actually drive off the lot with the vehicle. And so that's what they're waiting on currently. So they've made the purchase order, they've made the purchase, they're waiting on the title to come back. Tony, while I was down there, gave an estimate. It's not up to him, but his estimate is that they will have it probably first or second week in September. That van will actually be in their possession. So that's the update on that. The van's been purchased, it's been ordered. Probably second week in September they'll have it.
Stewart's buying the white one.
Yeah, and
They have great vans in El Salvador. Half of them are like four-wheel drive, and then they modify them. The white van he's talking about had a rack, and the bumpers, those are custom welded bumpers, like guards.
Stewart was obsessed
And we went to the beach. We took 15 people, and we put 2 big coolers on top of it, that full-length rack on the van. Very impressed.
those vans were no bigger than, say, a normal caravan and had about 15 seats in them. So it was not fun for me, but Stuart really, really loved them. Do we have any other questions? All right, if not, I'm going to close out, and I'm going to go back to the pulpit mic. And then we have ice cream downstairs for everybody, and an opportunity for you guys to ask maybe specific questions to specific team members if you'd like to. I wanted to talk just for the last 30 seconds or so of this, of how ways that our church is involved and has been involved, and then ways that we can be involved in the future, and ways that you as an individual can be involved in the future. When Jess and I first started at the Missions Committee back in 2018, we had talked about possibly going on a short-term missions trip and taking the church on a short-term missions trip. And so I had talked to Evan actually about that, and he told me that, yeah, that's probably something that we can do in the 5-year plan. And well, about a month later, Tony Escalante was coming through town on tour like he does every year, and we were down there in the youth building, and he was talking about the opportunities in the after-school program, and at one point I leaned over to Jess and said, that's where we're going, and we're going this year. And so we did in 2019. We took a team. But one of the other things that he talked about during that time was his vision to help move some of these children from the public school system into the private school system. The public school system there is fine, it's just incredibly underfunded. And so what they do to keep the costs down to meet with their funding goals is they've shortened the day so that they don't have to pay for breakfast, and so that the school system doesn't have to pay for breakfast or lunch for the kids. So they get out of school around 11:30 and they go in at about 8:30 or 9. So they're getting 2.5, 3 hours of education per day, and then they come to the program. So there's a private school that operates down there, and the total cost of that for 2 years of high school, which is what high school runs down there, is about $3,000. So if you want to be involved that way, you can fund a child going to the private high school for a $3,000 commitment over a 2-year period. That's one way that you can be involved. That's a way that our church has been involved. Since we started our partnership with Envision El Salvador, our church collectively has sent 6 kids through the private school. All of the ones that have graduated so far have gone to college, some for graphic design, some for business. One of the girls that we're funding right now wants to go to law school after she graduates. And according to Tony, she's got the grades to do it. So that's a way that you as an individual can be involved. Another way that you as an individual can be involved is by funding kids for the actual after-school program. The cost is approximately $60 a month per student. They pay for their lunch. There's laptop computers that they keep for homework help and homework prep and to help them with their actual computer classes. And they estimate that that costs about $60 a month. So that's something that you can fund as well. You would have an individual kid that was yours, and they would send you reports on a monthly basis. A lot of times those reports actually have interviews with the kid that you're funding. That's actually similar to Compassion. They work at about the same. You're able to send them letters, and they can send you letters, and then you can fund them through that. Again, that's a longer commitment, 3-4 years, if that's something that you were interested in doing. If you're interested in doing either of those, you can come and talk to me. Other ways that our church has been involved, we've sent money obviously for the van, which we just talked about. We've sent money down to help cover, they're looking to start a small business in the front as a way to get more people in the door, a small coffee shop, and so our church covered that as well. That's sort of on hold right now. The person that was supposed to lead that and head that up, his name was Gabriel, and he was the staff member that actually drowned back in January. So they're looking for somebody else to head that up. Our church has also helped cover things like their stoves and general maintenance, and when we go down there, pretty much anything that they need, we cover while we're on site. We've also sent money to help cover staff salaries. One of the things that nobody talked about that is worth mentioning is that minimum wage in El Salvador is $365 a month. And that's all they make working full-time. And minimum wage there is also determined by what industry you're in. So if you're in one of the textile or manufacturing plants, your minimum wage could be $300 a month or $280 a month. But for the average individual, they make about $365 a month. It's not like minimum wage is here where that's sort of the entry-level jobs. That's most jobs there. And so our church was able to help cover the salary for a couple years actually of most of the staff that was down there. So that's a way that we've been involved as well. Moving forward, we're going to continue this partnership. We're planning on going back again next year, taking a group with us. If that's something that you guys are interested in being involved in, we'll probably start signups for that somewhere in the October, November range once they get their calendar for next year set up. And again, whoever wants to come can come. We've taken, everybody from middle school age all the way up to retirement age and beyond. So if that's something that you want to sign up for, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to go ahead and pray, and then we will meet you guys all downstairs for ice cream, since ice cream was a massive part of our trip. Lord, thank you for this team. Thank you for their willingness to get involved and to do things that, were outside of their comfort zone. Thank you for this church as well. Thank you for the support that, we have felt, not just with this trip, but with everything else that we've done. All of the fundraisers that we've done in the past, the teams we've sent to Atlanta, both teams to El Salvador now. Thank you for a church that believes in missions and gets behind missions. I pray that you will continue to bless us so that we can continue to bless others. I want to pray right now as we go downstairs for a time of fellowship that you will help us to be clear as we answer questions, and that you will help people know what questions to ask. In your name I pray, amen. I think the ladies have already gone downstairs, so if you just want to head down the stairs, we will all meet you down there. Thank you guys so much for coming, and thank you for your support.